Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have everybody gathered here virtually today. My name is Peter Wanders. I am the president and CEO of Anderson Ranch, and I am excited to welcome everyone to our Thinker Thursday event. We started these 6 months or so ago here on campus, had a really great response, and have really seen the magic of letting these come across as a virtual event as well. A quick thanks to Leah and Esther, who put all these events together and make them so successful. So thank you to the team here at the ranch. If you'll allow me a quick moment, the ranch, to give you a little update, the ranch is strong and healthy. We've really pivoted our programs to be online. We're offering online workshops. They are selling out already, and have just, the first one ran this week with Andrea Wallace, and it was just a really successful event. So we're excited about that. We will have programming this summer on campus. We are going to handle that as a kind of pop-up basis based on people's comfort levels and what the health department says we will allow. But there's been art making on the ranch campus for 50 plus years, and that will not be an exception this year. It'll just be different. So we're excited for those of you that are able to come physically to campus. We're going to have some outdoor sculpture exhibitions that you can self-tour and some small art making on campus. So totally excited about that. I spent a good part of my day today working on how we have a gala event without anyone gathering in person. And I'll tell you, this ungala, as we're calling it, is exciting. You'll receive a box in the mail that are supplies to guide you through a curated experience at home. There'll be some chances to log on online and connect with other people that are doing the same thing. But it's exciting from a DJ to active art making to cocktails. It's going to be a fun virtual event, sort of a curated experience at home. So watch for the announcements of that over the next week. You are here today to hear from our various speakers. Our Thinker Thursdays has a very structured format. Each speaker selects 15 visual images or slides, and they have 15 seconds to speak about each slide. That allows basically their limitation is 2.5 minutes to tell a story. We will go directly through the speakers one by one. They'll have a moment to say their name and introduce themselves. We're going to keep that short because everyone received the bios in the mail. If you like, grab your email quickly and you can see and follow along a detailed bio, but they'll tell us our names and maybe how they're connected or related to the ranch. We're excited about that. So the Q&A at the end will be run through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you hover your mouse over the lower part of your screen, you'll see a function that says Q&A. If you type in your questions, I will moderate those and pass them on to the panel when we finish the program. All right, I think that covers everything. I believe our first speaker is Helen. We'll let you kick off and then we will rotate through each of our panelists today.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so hi, thanks. So I'm gonna read a short thing, and I guess we can press start and I'll go. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen as a child. I grew up in a house where I was expected to help with the chores. And because I was a girl, that meant there was often a note for me when I got home from school with instructions about how to help get dinner on the table. Casseroles to be put in the oven, carrots to be chopped, easy stuff. But it instilled in me a sense of the labor needed to feed people. By the time I got to college, I was already reading cookbooks and I bought a hot plate for my dorm room so I could make food for my friends. There were also years of waitressing, being in and around the hardworking, fast-moving kitchens of New York City that slung burgers and tuna melts. I actually know how to make an egg cream soda. I learned how to have an extremely organized refrigerator, and I realized that the kitchen was essentially a room full of tools. Life led me to pursue a PhD in art history, and each year of grad school, I bought a cookbook and worked my way through it. Every year, I learned techniques, flavor profiles, and the history and culture of places I hadn't been. I simultaneously wrote a dissertation on Marcel Duchamp, and while doing so, I almost always had a cookbook open on my desk. In grad school, no one had any money, so going out to eat was a huge deal, reserved for special occasions and days when someone's parents sent a check. This meant I cooked a lot. And as I did so, I was also learning about the 20th century avant-garde's call to merge art and life. While most of my cohort was focusing on the art part, it turned out that I was really interested in the life part. And if Duchamp opened the category of the everyday to art and opened the category of art to the everyday, I started to think about how there was nothing more everyday than food, and that the preparing and serving of food had historically fallen to women. When the pandemic started, I knew immediately that I needed to stock the fridge and the pantry. I knew those cookbooks were going to come down off the shelves. I knew that even though I had been eating takeout for what seemed like 100 years, that my old skill set was about to really come in handy. And so the cooking began. Every morning I wake up and I think about what to make. And as it became clear that one of the first casualties of the virus was our concept of time, like for instance, what is today anyway, I decided to use the menu as a way to give my day structure. Did stock need to be made? Could veggies be prepped in the late morning as a writing break? Could a stew simmer on the stove during a Zoom meeting? And then, as a lark, I posted our first meal on Instagram, and then the second, and then the third, and then I had to keep it going. The IG posts helped to motivate me. They stoked the fire I needed to keep it creative, to keep it lively, to just keep doing it. Because I realized what I've learned from my life with artists. More than anything, an artful life and a life in art is a dedication to an idea, a practice. It's about commitment, sincerity, and daily follow through. It's about dedicating yourself to something and pursuing it to the best of your abilities. It's about understanding that for the maker, for the cook, the process, the food, the cooking is almost as important as the product, the food. The added value has been that on most nights, there's been some pretty good food. I've managed to pull off 60 meals and 60 photos. Some days it was super easy. Some days it was fun. Some days it was just neutral. And some days I felt as oppressed as fuck by the entire endeavor. But I'd be lying if I didn't tell you how proud I was that I've managed to keep it going and how much I just love, love, love setting a pretty table. And these are the Instagram photos you're looking at. Sausage, broccolini, sauteed carrots with orange and tomatoes. And this was my favorite. Kale and chorizo stew with red lentils and carrots served on top of cornbread. And yes, we managed to finish that puzzle. Thank you.
Hi, can everybody hear me all right? Okay, cool. Umar Rashid, also Frohawk Two Feathers, a bunch of different names. Hello everyone, good to see you. Glad that everybody's okay and doing well. Thank you, Helen. Those meals look really good. Actually the chorizo dish with the cornbread, I'm gonna have to do that at some point. I made a horrible cassoulet the other day, and I just put it in the freezer because one day I might eat it in 2022. Anyway, so basically, my relationship with the ranch, a couple of years ago, I was there as a visiting artist in February, and I learned two things. Snowmass is a beautiful place, but it's also not really conducive to a person who smokes. So if you smoke, never go to Snowmass because you will run out of breath and you won't be able to do any skiing. But the aspens are beautiful, and the snow is pristine, and it almost looks like you're gonna crash into those mountains when you fly in there. So okay, so blah, 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 blah. So back to the work. What I do is I've taken history. I started out as a photographer. I was born in Chicago, 1976. I started out as a photographer initially. And when I graduated college. I was a 6-year senior when I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in photography. I moved to Los Angeles, where I thought I was going to be a portrait photographer. But then when I went to school, everything was digital. I mean, everything was analog, and then it all suddenly became digital. So I had no way of doing anything. Well, I mean, not in an easy way. So I took up painting. I'm a self-taught painter, and I've just been slowly rising through the ranks throughout the years, with my painting process. I mean, and the thing is, what I thought about with my painting is I wanted to create a history that was more inclusive than the one that I had known, because I feel that a lot of the problems with the current world that we exist in is the how we disseminate information, and generally the way we disseminate information is a sham and a farce, because it never tells the whole story. You only hear the story to the side of the victor. But there's so many different stories, and I think that my impetus for my work was, if everyone can understand that there's a larger, more contextual global narrative, a historical narrative, then we would all feel, we would all have our own work, sense of self-worth, and then we wouldn't be so downtrodden, and we can get actual things done instead of, going over to try to create something to fill that void in our hearts. So anyway, this is the Siege of Santo Domingo. This is and that is, it's going really quick. Oh, that is Most Young Kings, Andre I of Hispaniola, being assassinated by his generals, and using a woman in some leopard skin shorts as the beautiful foil. This is one of my favorite paintings. It's actually in the Dominican Republic with a collector, and one day I have to go to the Dominican Republic and see it. This is, what is this? The Palace of the Quilombos. So the Palace of the Quilombos was, this is actually in Jorge Perez's museum in Miami. This one, this is the Codex, the Axumite Stele, new Axumite Stele, and this has to deal with New York, Los Angeles, my adopted place. This is the Fleetwood Fitzcarraldo, which was a part of a show that I did at Jeffrey Deitch Gallery last year. It was curated by the fantastic Nina Chanel Abney. I'm sorry, like the images are going by so, oh, okay. This is also part of the triptych that I made for that show. This one is called In the Garden of Just Ice. Also, we have to see it all together. One day you might, well, actually they've all been sold to parceled off. And this is the Majestic Manner of the Maroons, which completes the trilogy of those particular pieces. But I do a lot of work in the Netherlands, and so I was talking about Dutch colonialism. This is Voltron Saves the Second Line, a painting that I did to what I was talking about, my religious beliefs. And this one, that one just happened to be a part of a show at Nicodeme Gallery a couple of years ago. This is a oldie but goodie. This is Latoya, the Queen of Prussia, which it makes no sense to you because I don't have enough time to tell you everything I want to tell you. This is a textile piece that is now in Amersfoort in the Netherlands in a show called Talk to Me or Speak to Me. I can't remember right now because it's all going so fast. There's another flag, Textile Works. Recently, I've been working on a lot of different textile works to like switch it up, because when I die, I just want to have like a massive amount of things. And yeah, like you will never know my genius until I'm dead. Oh, well, man, see, that was the best place to end off. Like I was just, boom, I want to drop the mic on that. Yeah. So I'm not even going to talk about this one. I'm just going to, the feather and the machete and more textile pieces. So anyway, I'm just going to tell you where I am right now. I was losing my mind up until last week, but I'm currently working on a show. I'm in the new iteration of Made in LA that should be happening soon this year. And I'm just working on those paintings, and I'm just trying to take care of my children and not go completely insane. But the funny thing is, you know, we always say like, oh, this is the time for rebirth. This is the time to do new things. And it's like, no, we are the same pieces of shit that we were before this shit started, you know? So it's like, you know, like you want to talk about that, but you don't. So anyway, love you guys. I'm going to watch everything else and take care. Boom! Drop the mic. Woo! Yeah.
Umar, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm Sarah Broughton. I am a piece of shit living in Aspen, Colorado. No, I'm kidding. I am actually in Aspen. I just feel very fortunate to be here right now. For the last, gosh, almost 25 years, I have been practicing architecture and have been a fan of the ranch for 20 years since we've lived in the Valley. But it was not until last summer that I took my first class with Simon Haas and Liz Farrell, and it was amazing, transformative, awesome. So I really, really felt honored to have a week at the ranch and get to experience what other people have been able to experience so many times. So I signed up for a class and I was supposed to be in at the beginning of June, but I'll do something online in August, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you so much for having me here today. All right, Leah, let's go. For the Time, Space, Existence exhibition for the 2020 Biennale of Architectura in Venice, we were moved by this quote: "Could a greater miracle take place than for us to look through each other's eyes for an instant?" This quote is more pertinent today than ever, as its root is empathy. And we wanted an exhibition that connects us. Knowing that we wanted an immersive exhibition, we found images that inspired us, that really made us thinking about our exhibition in 3 dimensions. In Colorado, many lessons are learned from the complexities of the natural environment. Last year, historic 100-year avalanches imposed immediate scars on the landscape. But with time, the land evolves and springs back, offering an exchange of perspective. So we are inspired by nature's example, and our exhibit is an exchange of perspective, fostering empathy. We started with our chair design, and we created movable modular seating that could be organized in various configurations, creating context. The leftover space is now available and an opportunity for modifications. We created the opportunity for shifting perspective by varying the seating angles and depths. Through context, space, and perspective, we created exchange and asked the question, how can context invite exchange and create community? These are our modular chair mock-ups, testing the position and posture, all designed to affect how we exist in space. Our architectural process is influenced by nature. Just like nature responds, preserves, and evolves, architecture does the same. We created a series of visualization of the exhibition with our inverted canopy, real-life avalanche images, and our context at the floor. The canopy is made from CNC cut polished stainless steel that reflects the light coming from the windows. The room is ringed with different avalanche images at varying scales. The modular seating allows for context and community. As one leans back to look up, the perspective shifts, as if looking down onto the renewed canopy. Thank you.
Hey there, everybody. That was wonderful. Sarah, thank you. And Umar, wow. Now I realize I got to talk really fast. So I am a documentary filmmaker, and I taught a class a couple of years ago at Anderson Ranch that was an introduction to filmmaking. And I have a production company that lives really at the intersection of creating media, creating content, and doing a lot of community activism, really putting media to work as a kind of living, dynamic organism, really, so that it becomes part of forwarding social change. So I'm about to take you on a little journey with me, which is one of my kind of wackier pursuits. I seem like a sane human, but after this, you might question that. So we could cue up the first picture. So I'm going to take you back to 2012. This is my son, Eli. And at that time, Obama was up for re-election, and I was really pissed off about partisanship. Oh my God, I'm here already. So I was so pissed off that I kept saying those people on the other side of the aisle are making sure nothing gets done because they are so anti-Obama that they're stopping him from making any progress. So my son said, you know what, Mom? You're the most politically intolerant person I've ever met. I was like, me? Are you kidding? No way. No way. I'm a tolerant human being. So I thought, you know, he's probably right. I am absolutely unwilling to listen to the other side. And if I'm not willing to listen, then just imagine, you know, that probably none of us are willing to listen. So I decided that I was going to go out into the world with a little table and invite people to sit down and talk politics with me. So I did what any self-respecting filmmaker would do. I took a crew with me. And the table itself had a look, as you can see. There's a little yellow flower in the middle, and every conversation started with, if this is liberal and this is conservative, where do you fall on the spectrum? Move the flower. And I want to introduce you to a few people I met on the way. Here's a obviously very conservative. You see his flowers on the right, a Baptist minister from North Carolina who basically felt that the Bible was the preamble to the Constitution. And across the street from him was an imam in a mosque, and he is a man who had been Baptist, raised Baptist, and converted to Islam because of the social justice elements of Islam. And Sarah Longwell, who is a gay Republican, and I asked her, how can you possibly support a party that doesn't support you? And she said, well, I knew I was gay long before I knew I was a Republican. So I decided I was just going to kind of work within the party to try to change it. Over the course of my journey, I had about 120 people sit at the table. We filmed all of these table talks, and I produced a film called Bring It to the Table that I then took out to do screenings. And at one of my screenings, I had my table with me, and I asked if I could get a volunteer from the audience to sit at the table just to see how that might go in a public setting. And after he went and sat down, a bunch of other hands went up and said, hey, are you gonna let other people sit at the table? Because I wanna sit there. And I was shocked. I was like, who knew that people would wanna share publicly their political viewpoints? And we go deep, we drill down why you believe what you believe. So anyway, this unfortunate photograph is because after having toured the country doing these interactive events, in 2016, this happened. When Trump got elected, I was so done with this project. I really thought I had exhausted myself. And then he got elected and I thought, now I can't stop. Damn it. It's like if he didn't already screw stuff up, he screwed my life up too. So instead of retiring the table, I ended up having it multiply. And I started what I call 10 table events where I train facilitators. We take these tables out into public spaces and we get conversations going. So this is an attempt to actually take this little germ of an idea and of other people actually host the table talks. And this was my very last table talk before the pandemic hit, literally minutes before they shut down the state of Michigan. It's in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where by the end of our table talk, basically an announcement was made that this was the last public programming event that was allowed at the university where I was presenting.
Thanks, Julie. That was amazing. I'm just gonna go for it because I don't know how long these slides go, and I'm kind of afraid that mine's gonna like already go to the next one. Hi, I'm Sheida. I do talk fast, so hopefully this format works out well for me. I know Leah from RISD. I was teaching there as the diversity fellow at the time, which was a whole other story, but she was in a crit and was making some incredible work. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. So I'm going to be talking about the idea of sanctuaries and thinking also about like governance. Just a little background, my parents are both political refugees from Iran, and my father escaped, you know, and came here after seeking asylum because he was a political radical against the Ayatollah's totalitarian regime. My mother was imprisoned and tortured, and then eventually escaped and was able to come to the United States also under asylum. So they talked to me a lot about their story as I was growing up. And my mother used to be a nurse, but when she moved to the States, she doesn't really speak much English. And so she couldn't practice medicine on people, and she started practicing medicine. We grew up in like Ohio, in very conservative area. We were the only Middle Eastern family when 9/11 happened. You know, I was like the only Middle Eastern kid in like an all-white, you know, city, town. And so she was taking care of all these like injured animals, mostly roadkill that she was trying to resuscitate and take care of. And she always thought about herself as like a governor over them, you know, like if she's caretaking for them, she is providing them sanctuary. But do they have a way to speak up? Do they have their own rights? And so I've started thinking about that in my own practice. Since working at RISD, which was a very intense place to work, I started thinking about my version of therapy being animal rehabilitation, and I've done it my whole life. So I started doing it officially. So I'm one of 3 certified bird rehabilitators in the state of Rhode Island. So right now in my basement, I have a bird clinic, a wild bird clinic, and I have about 50 birds down there right now. So here's the European starling. So it just kind of starts out with 2 images of birds that I'm taking care of. I get calls like 5, 10, 15 a day with people telling me they found injured wildlife. They drop it off. I'm doing contactless bird drop-offs on my doors. Here's an owl who ran into a car, so had some blunt head trauma. So you do, you know, a little bit of anti-inflammatory to get the brain swelling down, and you take care of them and do some work in the meantime. Eventually, they're all released into the wild. So they started coming into my work. And you see here, this is actually an image. I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but in 2016, Prince bin Salman paid to get a whole United Airways jet cleared out so he could transport all of his falcons. So here I'm thinking also about, you know, Saudi as like the richest oil country, using their money not for, you know, helping the Yemenis that they're killing, but transporting their falcons. So this was a tableau photograph that I made with an actual falcon. The necklace says Allah. And here's kind of like a fuckboy photo of bin Salman wearing his like boxer shorts, you know, heart boxer shorts, holding his like falcon. Sorry, I'm not like the most like clean with my words. I would call him a fuckboy. Here's an image from the 1951 through 53 coup d'etat, the United States CIA coup d'etat that happened in Iran. In response to that, a lot of Iranians started writing all over the walls, "Yankee, go home." This has been a sentiment that's kind of come up again with sanctions. And I'm thinking a lot about the ideas of reparations packages, which is this photograph. So all of these are tableau. I build them in studio sculpturally, and then I use the camera to take the image to flatten it. So it's kind of an aggressive act. Photography is also, I think, a really aggressive practice because you're taking your like lens stick and you're penetrating into a world. So what does it mean to like also have like a consensual practice? Here's a photo from a protest in 2019. These were happening in November when gas prices were jacked up 10 times. And here's the photo I made in response. This is the new series called Livers of Power. So these are about, this is about like the unplugging of the government. There was an internet blackout to prevent individuals from responding to the actual government at the time. In January 1st through 3rd, after Qasem Soleimani was killed, and no, we're not related, please never ask me that question, there's a Ukrainian plane that was shot down by Iranian missiles. So here's an actual footage of the missiles. I use a lot of source images in my work, so you'll see them again here, those circles in this piece. These images, levers of power, thinking about politicians' gestures and how these politicians govern their people. And if they actually provide them with sanctuary, if they need to have that or not. And then here's the other opposing finger. So the last one we saw is the Rouhani with the dove, who we think is like peaceful. It was actually Trump's finger with a hawk on it. So thinking about the idea of a war hawk or a warmonger. And so these images are kind of meant to conflate, like, how do we see what's good and how do we see what's bad? How do we judge good versus evil? Here's a recent image. So with coronavirus going on, I felt like I had to make something about what's happening. So Iran, this is the health minister, Hadiji, and he's saying that no, coronavirus isn't a problem. So he's wiping the sweat off his brow. So I had to make something about it. Just so you see how they're made, this is like an in-studio shot. So they're really shitty. They're made tabletop. They're constantly falling apart. And the last photo you'll see is actually the photo of this Levers of Power series. So there's that hand that you saw in that source image originally. We all know that toilet paper is running out, tissues kind of reanimating that. And these are all of the images in the backdrop of the satellite images of the mass graves that are being dug in Iran right now. So I'll leave it on that. It's kind of a somber note, but thanks for having me. Yes.
I forgot to unmute my mic. Okay, start again. My name is Marty Sherwin. My connection to the Anderson Ranch is my admiration for Peter, and I hope I'll do more. It took me 15 years to write this book I'm going to talk about, and I have 15 slides and 15 seconds a slide. I have to talk really fast. So let's begin. My book, Gambling with Armageddon, Nuclear Roulette, from Hiroshima to the Cuban Missile Crisis, is about nuclear weapons, leadership, and luck. We know that nuclear weapons require smart leadership, but as Gambling with Armageddon demonstrates, good luck is necessary too. After Hiroshima, no president or Soviet leader wanted a nuclear war. But in the 17 years between 1945 and 62, Presidents Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy, and Stalin and Khrushchev created nuclear policies and arsenals that made war likely. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a result of their policies. Khrushchev's missiles to Cuba were an extension of that deployment. I have time to describe only one lucky incident from gambling. During the crisis, I was the intelligence officer for an anti-submarine warfare squadron based in California. That made me the custodian of our top secret war plans. On October 22nd, before President Kennedy announced the blockade of Cuba, I was ordered to retrieve and deliver those plans to our captain. We were going to deploy to Baja, California. I recall junior officers joking that Baja beaches were a beautiful place to die. I did not know until I researched gambling how close to death we came. We really were on the verge of war, Khrushchev said. War was closer than Khrushchev and Kennedy realized, and they could not stop it. The instigator was the captain of Soviet submarine B-59, who gave the order on October 27th to prepare to fire a nuclear torpedo at US warships, dropping explosive charges near his boat. The submarine's conditions were horrific. Built to operate in the North Sea without air conditioning, the warm Caribbean waters had raised the internal temperature to 140 degrees. Captain Savitsky panicked. Maybe the war has already started up there, he screamed. We're going to blast them now. We will die, but we will sink them all. We will not become the shame of the fleet. World War III was seconds away. I want to pause to dwell on luck and the role of chance. History is not a story of inevitable events. The destinies of nations and individuals are moved forward through constant crossroads of decisions and chance, with the influence of each in constant flux. When I researched this event, the childhood image appeared, as you see, Superman stopping the torpedo. The firing order, though, was miraculously canceled by a staff officer who luckily was randomly assigned to travel to Cuba on submarine B-59. His name was Brigade Chief of Staff Vasily Arkhipov, and he virtually stopped World War III. The military wanted to invade Cuba. Air Force Chief of Staff General Curtis LeMay and the Strategic Air Command were eager to attack the Soviet Union. Could that have been prevented if that torpedo had been fired? The alarming conclusion is that a nuclear war was averted because a random selection process had deployed Captain Arkhipov aboard Soviet submarine B-59. As long as nuclear weapons arsenals exist, humanity's survival will continue to rest on a foundation no more solid than luck. What about nuclear deterrence? Good luck.
Hi everyone, my name is Salwan, and my connection to the range, I was one of the participants in the first 3-year advanced photography mentorship with Ed Kashi, Julius Partner, and James Estrin. And I'm about to show you one of my recent assignments that's related to the coronavirus. So I'm gonna read one sentence, and then after that, Leah, you can start. So up to mid-March, more than 400 lawmakers packed the House floor, approving the second major rescue plan. No one wore a mask. They all stood shoulder to shoulder, or sat shoulder to shoulder, and maybe elbowing, not shaking hands. But by early May, everything kind of changed, and my task was to go and kind of show that. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell started doing these huddles almost daily for GOP leaders in massive hearing rooms so they can kind of follow social distancing guidelines. But like much of America, Congress slowly adapted to the new normal as coronavirus swept across the country and also into the halls of the Capitol. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi kind of become the face of the Democrat Party in many ways during the pandemic, started showing up on a lot of interviews, telling photographers to step back, like in this photo. And it's just a different feeling up in the Hill. I've covered the Hill a few times, including the impeachment, but it was different. It was like almost like a ghosty feeling to it. I couldn't stop taking photos of a lot of senators kind of struggling with their masks. So many struggle with their masks. It's like something new. But you could tell that a lot of them, they were trying to keep social distancing, but they don't have to anymore because there weren't any reporters or photographers like kind of following them everywhere, all in the halls. So you would walk in one of the halls, see one of the senators, or you see only few people keeping social distancing and trying to ask you a question like in this photo. But people still work there in this cafeteria where it partially closed. There were like only a few chairs if you want to get lunch because most of the staff stayed home, but senators began kind of like appearing by video to committee hearings. Like here, one of the hearings I covered, it was pretty surreal. One of the senators, Elizabeth Warren, showed up, and this was like the first hearing where they used video chats. And you have senators who wore a mask, and you have few who refused. like here, Senator, who already had COVID and refused to wear a mask and toured the Capitol. Some stuff started operating again, like this Senate, almost they call it Senate subway, that goes between buildings underground. Reporters do their best to kind of keep social distancing, but many times I'm like keeping my distance. I'll see like a bunch of people behind me or people walking right next to me. So it was kind of difficult to kind of work in that environment. So my next project, I'm currently working on, is about the workers, and I'm going behind the scene and showing all the cleanings and the new ways they had to come up with to kind of help stop the spreading of the coronavirus, because there's a couple Capitol Police had tested positive, some staff. So that project should be coming up in a few weeks. Thank you.
Wow, that was really fantastic. So excited to have each one of you talk about such different subjects. A reminder to our attendees, if you hover over your screen at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A function. You can type in your questions there, and I will sort of moderate getting those out to the panel. But if I could start real quick, just hard to see such different locations and different people, but also so exciting to see kind of those themes that start to intertwine between different ideas and different topics. So maybe Helen and Sarah, I might start with you. This idea of comfort and finding domesticity, and yet Sarah's side creating a public space that encourages connection and community, especially in the face of the social distancing that we've seen over the last few months. I'm curious, Sarah, maybe if you could reflect a little bit on where you see parallels in Helen's creation of a domestic space of interaction. And yet, Helen, maybe I'll have you respond to Sarah with some thoughts about creating that public space of dialogue.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is we created the exhibition, and obviously it got canceled. But I think so many of the principles that drove us to doing this exhibition are even more highlighted today. And it's through that connection that you can have that exchange of perspective that I think all of us are finding. I think at first we thought we could do it a lot like this, but I know myself, I'm finding on week 9 right now, I'm really yearning for that connection, and there is just a real need for that. So I think our exhibition is even more pertinent to what's happening today. And then I think you take optimism, and I do think that what was so powerful about the avalanches that we experienced here in Colorado, they were massive 100-year avalanches, and that you looked at the marks that were going on, and then all of a sudden 4 or 5 months later, just this rebirth that was going on. And I get a lot of optimism through nature and through seeing those examples. And I believe that we are resilient. So we are going to come out of this invigorated and needing change. There is no other option other than changing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was really struck by your presentation, Sarah, because it was clear it was pre-COVID, like even like the way you see chairs close together now, and you're like, oh my God, we couldn't sit there, but wondering what you think, because I too am tacking towards optimism, but what do you think is going to happen to design? Like, can you imagine starting to design, I don't know, for this space, for like the way, like if this goes on for a long time, and we have to do this. Do you think it will have an impact on your community, on architecture and design community?
Absolutely, and it already is. I think we're going to learn to live with this, maybe with different measures. And I think we're going to come up with a new way of being tactile, right? Because touch is being so impacted.
Right. Yep, I agree.
I'm going to pivot quickly to two more people. I can warn you a little, Julie and Martin. I was going to talk a little bit about where I found really interesting connections between your two talks around sort of conflict. And Marty, obviously, in sort of the biggest global concept of conflict over the last century. And then Julie, really the extreme of conflict that you've seen in this political divide over the last 4 or 5 years. So would love to hear maybe either of you volunteer to go first in a reflection of where you saw sort of parallels between your two topics.
I'm happy to dive into that if that's okay. It's an interesting intersection because conflict is the result of misunderstanding, so in many cases, like what we're seeing now is under ignorance of what other people think and thereby demonizing, and that has escalated since I've been doing this project. It was bad in 2012. And I really thought, it's bad. How bad could it possibly get? And it seems to get worse and worse and worse. And I think that the pandemic is an extreme example. If you can take something like a life and death, a virus, and turn that into a partisan battle, it also shows you how easy it is to activate that kind of animosity and trigger the impulses of a bifurcation of society. It's a with us or against us, and it's such a distortion of anything that's productive, constructive, and communal. So I think we are in interesting ways. I appreciate that you've drawn these two together because they're so similar.
We are we're getting a lot of questions, so I apologize for not trying to pull two more of those of a few of you that have not jumped in yet, but let me jump to some of the questions that are getting posted by the audience. The first one I see here is to Salwan. Can you talk about the program you mentioned with the ranch, the 3-year mentorship program, and how that can serve artists, writers, and architects in their careers? As you see the other panelists on the screen here, how did that program impact your practice?
It was definitely, it was when I was first starting in my photography career. I was just hired to work at the Detroit Free Press. I had an idea to kind of work on a certain project that will cover, my family and tell my story as I was a refugee from Iraq. And I met Ed at one of the workshops at Kashi, and we talked, and then he posted on his Twitter about the first time that they may do this, like 3 years, and we were like, wow, that's a long time to be in a program. But then we a lot of people were interested, and that group become like a family. And this is now there's I think like 4th or 3rd group, but the first group we all came and gathered, and it was all new, like we were learning about each other. But I think it become more not only about the work, but become more about we become a family, and also started helping each other with like if someone they like, oh, we need a freelancer in Mexico, and one of my friends, Luke, is in Mexico, who was with us. So I started kind of like suggesting and helping people kind of help their photography grow as well and get assignments. And then I think the program, it was one of the best learning experience for me, because you kind of like as an artist or a photographer, for me, when you're out working, you mainly working, you rarely have a time to stop and kind of like, if I'm not on deadline, I do go back and meet people and talk to them and maybe have dinner with them. But most of the time you're in and out, because I work at the newspaper, different than when I'm on a project where I have more time to kind of explore.
Awesome. The next question I see coming through is actually for Marty. which I'll just point out, Marty both threw me a compliment when he introduced himself, and I didn't let him respond to Julie. So maybe before, Marty, I pass on the question I see from the audience, maybe I'll let you respond to the question I prompted a moment ago.
Well, I just would say one thing. I think Julie's answer was, very complete. But it's an irony that the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War were existential threats to each other. But they talked more and tried to cooperate more in preventing a nuclear war than the Republicans and Democrats are trying to cooperate now. And it's an amazing disconnect.
Awesome. The question that got posted here is by Kai Bird. He said, Dr. Sherwin, why haven't we heard more about the Russian officer who saved us from Armageddon?
Because I only had 225 seconds. And I had to give some kind of context. But Vasily Arkhipov, the officer, and I showed, a 15-second slide of him, was one of those amazing people who was cool under fire and thought ahead about the big picture. And of course, to connect things with today, do we have leaders who are cool under fire and are thinking about the big picture? I'll leave the answer to the audience. You know what mine is.
Sheida, the next question was posted to you, and I think it's fascinating. It is, what is your idea of sanctuary? And how do you see some of the parallels between the birds and the animals that you and your mother worked with and the political situation that your family was in as refugees?
Absolutely. I think one thing I think about a lot, first off, is that there's never going to be an ideal sanctuary because those that run sanctuaries govern in one shape or form. And I don't think there's ever been like a fair type of governance that I've seen in history. So it also comes to thinking about like who is governing and are they making decisions that are for the people or for those that they're governing or the society. And in my case, or my mother's case, she also was a refugee, so she had to go through lots of systems to get to a place of sanctuary. And once she did, was it a sanctuary or not? Those are lots of questions that could be asked. In my case, it's like I'm providing a sanctuary for these, birds or creatures. So I'm doing the governance, but am I able to responsibly make the decisions for them? I have to euthanize animals all the time. And so it's also like, how do you decide when you get to like make that decision for something that can't make the decision for itself? And so there's all of these kind of moments where I'm thinking about what that means and if that's, okay, or what does caretaking mean, as someone that is governing, like how do you caretake for your citizens? I'm thinking a lot, all my family is in Iran. So I'm also thinking a lot about like what the government there is like, and are they caretaking for their people? And the answer is no, clearly, and how can you also not be a totalitarian regime and provide safety, but also provide compassion? So yeah, these are just like philosophical things I think about a lot. I don't know if I have like answers to them. I don't think there is an ideal sanctuary because a utopia is impossible and also like really problematic. So it's hard to say.
Helen, one of the attendees posted a question saying, I love the way you connect your experience with cooking to your childhood and to artistry. Do you think there's another skill we could learn that has a similar relationship?
I think there would have to be. I think it's more about the structure or the principle of the thing. Truth be told, I really did not like the fact that I was shunted into the kitchen for chores as a kid. I really, really, really resented it and thought in some inchoate way it was pretty sexist. Meant to something in order to be able to map those other skills on it. You have to teach kids how to do some kind of work. And then as they get older, their passions can like sort of get layered onto that structure that's in yourself. And I was really lucky that I had that structure, and then I met all these artists who taught me how to like basically commit to something at a daily level.
Umar, you win the award for the best one-liner of the night. You won't know my genius until I'm dead. So congratulations on the victory line there. But we've had a bunch of the audience ask some questions really about your process and your materials and the use of cloth and fabric. Could you talk maybe a little bit about the evolution of your practice and what you're excited about kind of now?
Well, I'm excited. I mean, like, okay, so this thing is a thank you. You know, like, you know, congrats to me.
You got
You're welcome, everybody. No, anyway, no, it's great. I've been writing this thing for 15 years. I've been writing this narrative. So basically, I just take the story. I mean, I take the paintings actually come out of the narrative itself. So there's the actual written narrative to all the things that you've seen visually. There's a written variant of all of that, you know, and you know, more detailed because it gets into the intricacies of the characters and everything like that. But so I've been doing that 15 years. I'm working on I'm actually moving into the European continent now because I'm entering, which in my history and in global history would be the Napoleonic age. So I'm entering into like the early 19th century. So I'm, you know, so it's a heavy focus on Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean, which for the past 2 years I've been working a lot with, you know, America, North America, and there's still like micro narratives that are happening along those lines. But yeah, and the materials I've been doing, you know, I paint acrylic. I don't do oil because my idea is like the way my mind works is very rapid. So I don't have time to watch paint dry. You know, I like to get in there, do the drawing. That takes up most of the time, you know, do a nice acrylic wash and be done with it. And you know, also adding different things like there's sculpture. I didn't even talk about that because you know, I totally ran out of time. But you know, and the thing is, I just want to create this. Like the reason why I said, you know, is as part of it is my ego talking, but another part of it really is I have been making this for so long. I'm going to be making this until the day that I die. Like it's like a 300-year narrative, you know, it's my Homeric epic, you know, so to speak. So in creating something like that, I just feel like, you know, I have to go through all the sculptures, the paintings, the installations, the performances. Like there's so much to it that one day I hope to truly show everyone. Yeah, but thanks everybody. Thank you so much. It's so good to hear from you all. I follow most of y'all on Instagram. Anybody that's on Instagram, if you want to hang out or something. Julie, looking at you. Helen, you know what it is. Yeah. Marty, what's up, man? Let's talk about this Cold War business. Sheida, yeah. All right. You know, I see y'all, man. Salwan, you know, I don't know, man. I'm not a wage worker, bro. You know, you want to come in my studio and take some images of me, you know, working it out. That's cool. But, you know, you ain't going to see me cooking beans for a senator, man. Not never. No. No. Helen, recipes, please. Just inbox them to me. And thank you, Peter.
Thank you. I'm supposed to have closing remarks, but I almost want to just let that go. How about a moment for the panelists? We really appreciate all of you. It was so fantastic. These salons and Thinker Thursdays all end up on our website, on our YouTube channel. So if you go to our website, you can see a replay. They have been really just fantastic. Today being a perfect example of just brilliant minds and totally different approaches to the world. And I'll take any of the 150 or so of you watching as an audience. Go pick 15 images and 15 seconds per slide and see how hard it is to condense down and structure your conversation. What our panelists did today was a real feat, and we so appreciate what they're doing. The Ranch's regular events online. The next one is Tom Sachs in conversation with Liz Farrell. That'll be on Tuesday, May 16th as part of our Art Salon series. the next Thinker Thursday next month, third Thursday of the month, June 18th at 4 p.m. We look forward to having you there. Please watch our website or our Instagram, and you'll see all the upcoming events. But we're so thrilled by the community of the ranch and how everyone, despite this isolation, has really shown their commitment to the ranch as a community of creatives. And tonight is a great example of that. So thank you to the audience and thank you to our panelists. And I wish everyone a fantastic weekend. Enjoy some time to yourself. And I hope today sparked some things for you to think about on your next walk or quiet cup of coffee. Thanks all of you. Have a great
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye.